So today we're going to talk about lessons learned from modernizing analytics and data science at the Gap. And many people say data is the new oil and that companies that leverage data science to drive their way of working will be successful in the future. We all know the stories of companies like Amazon, Netflix, and Stitch Fix, but those were data native companies. They grew up with this in their DNA. How do you practically do this for an existing company, one like Gap, who is celebrating our 50th anniversary this year? Today, I want to share some concepts and hopefully some practical lessons of how to do this along the way. Big data, we've all heard this term. It's quite possibly one of the biggest buzzwords since data mining in the early 2000s, soon to be overtaken by deep learning. At best, it's a slightly vague term that can mean everything from massive size, lots of data, and massively complex data to the ever-expanding variety of sources, ranging from the traditional, like things we click on in the browser, transactional data, to sensors coming from the Internet of Things and heart rate and GPS sensors attached to basically every device on the market now. And talking about big, every minute, enough data captured across the world can fill up the hard drives of every person in this room 10 times over. Every minute. That's kind of insane to think about. But the next thing to think about is research has shown that less than 1% of data ever gets analyzed. And then there's the growing concern that big data doesn't necessarily equate to big insights, right? Even some of the earliest success stories of the Google flu trends, lauded for years for its ability to predict where flu outbreaks would spread, suffered a big blow this year by overstating severity of the flu outbreak by nearly 2 times against the actual outbreak. There's lots of potential causes for this, but this highlights one of the challenges in working with big data. It's not just a black box. There is an art in the modeling causality and dealing with sample bias. And many executives at big companies just want to get to the magic without the investment. How many people have experienced that? But what is the magic behind how companies are dealing with these challenges? And no, it's not the mythical unicorn hovering in the mist, but a new breed of worker known as the data scientist. So this term actually dates back to the 1960s, but it wasn't until about 2008, as chronicled by Tom Davenport, when the data scientist became the sexiest job of the 21st century. I remember when the article came out and everybody rushed to LinkedIn to change their job title right away. I was one of them. And highlighting examples from LinkedIn and Facebook, he shared some of the successes and key traits that the data scientist brings to problem solving. The data scientist is equal parts stats geek, hacker, and entrepreneur, but they are not shiny unicorns that can solve data problems as big as solving world peace and eliminating hunger all by themselves. But what actually is a data scientist? So my favorite study was one about data scientists by data scientists, and it highlights 4 general types of data scientists. There's the data developer, and these are folks at companies like Google and Twitter and many other companies that are more heavily engineering focused. We have the data researcher, who's understanding deep, complex relationships, typically in an academic setting, but also more and more in the commercial settings. We have data creatives, who create amazing infographics for the New York Times and other publications, and also now becoming more and more commonplace in industry. And then there's the data business person, and that's what I like to be, the data entrepreneur. So people who are trying to solve problems with data in their organization. And now that you have the data scientist, the question is, where can you apply them across the enterprise? And this is a fairly standard consultant way to describe how to leverage. And this is where time goes across one horizon, and along the other axis, it's the level of impact. But I like to simplify things a little bit more, and this really aligns to how we operate our team and our vision and our mission at Gap. And it comes down to 2 simple things at the highest level. First, how do you make better, faster, and smarter decisions using things like dashboards and reports and presentations and tools? And then second, how do you automate and power product experiences, brand new ways of thinking and interacting with your customers? So enough of the theory, how do we actually use it? And this quote's actually one of my favorite quotes. The value of an idea lies in the using of it. So today we're going to share 5 quick lessons on how to leverage data science and analytics to drive transformation at established companies. So the first comes from one of the 800-pound gorillas in this space, Amazon, which is where you need the CEO and the executive team to model and drive the behavior change. This is absolutely paramount to success. And it starts by listening to data starts at the top. And a data-driven culture, I'm just going to read this quote here. A data-driven culture is meaningless without the support of the CEO and the executive team and their own willingness to challenge assumptions that they hold dear. A top-down approach is the only way to break the tyranny of the hippos. Everybody's heard of the hippos, right? The highest paid person's opinion. But it can't be just that. Lots of inspiration also comes from Airbnb, where they not only have executive buy-in, they've created a data university to make sure the access and the tools pairs with the education to ensure that they truly democratize the data decision process. And this leads us to our very first lesson today, which is to start at the top, but build from the masses. It's kind of a bimodal function here, right? And now you've got the buy-in from your executive, you've got the support from the bottom of your organization, and those two are starting to converge. But what's next? So the next step is to figure out how to bring technology to bear in bringing the data strategy to life. And many companies like Gap, particularly large ones, are faced with the age-old question of which path to take. Build versus buy. And the path that we're taking at Gap is to leverage third parties like Microsoft, like Domino, and all these other companies that you see up on the screen to help us quickly solve problems that we couldn't solve on our own. Our organization used to build everything. We used to build every piece of technology that was associated with running our business, but we found that embracing third parties has allowed us to accelerate progress. And one of the key areas that we've been focused on is building a customer 360, which is now morphed into from a customer data platform to our enterprise data platform. And this is going to allow us to know our customers extremely well and to build out personalized experiences for them. One of the core aspects is understanding customer identity. Historically, we've relied on a PL SQL script written about 15 years ago to stitch together our view of the customer. It was very much rules-based and hasn't been invested in quite a long time. It was also run on batch mode, and it was updated every couple days. I think a lot of people have had experience with those types of processes as well. But then we leveraged a third-party partner called Imperity to begin to reimagine what a next-generation solution could look like. And we were able to bring a new version of this to market in a matter of weeks instead of the years-long time frame from our existing internal dev teams. And this takes us to our second lesson of the day, which is to leverage partners along the way. So that now we've got our executive buy-in. We're starting to build our technology platform leveraging partners, but what's next? What should we apply this to? So we decided to do some basic analysis on our customer base. We wanted to know what drives engagement and long-term value. So we dug into our data to better understand the types of customers who visit us again. And we found that the multi-visit customer, so a customer that just buys from us twice, is 5 times more valuable. A customer that is multi-channel, so they're buying in both our online and in-store channels, is 8 times more valuable. And a customer that's shopping across any of our brands is 10 times more valuable. So this means we need to think about bringing our customers back, but bringing them back across inline, our in-store experiences, and across all of our brands. So to get them from their first to second purchase, the median amount of time that we have to capture is only 34 days. And this number kind of blew people's minds. How do we begin? And if you think about it, if you're not really data-driven, you might think that some of the basic research that had been done previously was that customers buy 3 to 4 times a year. So you're thinking, okay, somebody's going to come in and buy once a quarter. So we really had to change the mindsets of our internal teams to get them to think about lifecycle campaigns. And it's not really rocket science, but it was able to be understood by our entire marketing team that the faster we can get the customers back in, the more likely we are to create a sticky environment to keep people purchasing from us. So we decided to analyze the predominant purchase paths that customers take when moving from their first purchase to their second purchase. And so you can see up here on the screen, people who buy denim in their first purchase are likely to come back and buy a top from us. And so once we had all of those assets in place, we started to launch our new technology stack on our e-commerce platform, which is, again, driven by third parties, Optimizely and Telium, to help us test new content combinations. And here's a couple examples of that. We like to personalize the homepage based off of your prior history, and not only your prior buying history from us, but your prior browsing history from us as well. And this is where the story really starts to get interesting. We started in 2017 with one experience. If you came to Gap.com or any one of our other brands, everybody got the same exact experience on the site. But what we did was begin to sequentially build multiple segments, and each of these segments, based off the personalization that we applied to it, were able to deliver a meaningful revenue per visit impact. In 2018, we moved up to 4 segments. In April of 2018, we were at 27 segments. And today we're at 87 segments. So if you go onto our website, you're getting one of 87 possible combinations, or one of 87 possible experiences. And this leads us to our next lesson, number 3, which is not to focus on the fancy, shiny, AI-enabled automation solution at first, but to keep it simple. Focus on the low-hanging fruit, at least at the beginning. So now we've got the executive buy-in, we've got our technology stack, and we begin to set some proof points in the organization. And of course, the next logical question is, oh my God, how do we scale this? So in order to scale, we've begun to build an organizational model that not only relies on centralized resources for our data science and analytics team, but also embedding those data entrepreneurs I spoke about at the very beginning to help drive that adoption. We've got a team called Decision Support, and we think of these as analytical consultants or data entrepreneurs that work directly with business units to help solve their problems and then use the resources of our large data and analytics organization to help them solve those problems. And so that takes us to lesson number 4. Embed data entrepreneurs to help drive value. Okay, so what's next? So remember those 2 application areas that we talked about at the beginning, improving decision-making and powering product experiences? We've talked a lot about the first, so now I want to talk a little bit about the second. And this is one where we get inspiration from another company, probably one that everybody in the room knows. And I want to set this up with a little bit of a video. It's about 3 minutes, and it's a really interesting video.
Hey Lily,
What?
do you want to open a birthday present early?
Yeah.
You do? Okay, go sit on the couch. Is your birthday coming?
Yeah.
Okay. So just open that backpack.
What? Oh, heavy. Just 'cause?
No,
Yes.
no, just open it. Just look what's in there.
Oh my goodness.
Well, what's in there? Pull the stuff out.
I got a movie. How'd you know I won this, Mom?
Yeah. What else?
I got another movie. How'd you know I won this?
I
How?
didn't. I
How?
just didn't.
Mommy, how? Whoa! Those!
Pajamas.
Ooh.
What kind are those?
There's a monster. I mean, Minnie Mouse.
Minnie Mouse. What else is in there?
Pajama pants. Wow! Let's see.
Do you remember? Show me. What does it say?
I love Disneyland.
What else is in there? Snacks?
What else is in here?
More snacks? That's it. Where do you think we should take all this stuff?
Leave it here.
Where do you want to go with it? If you could go anywhere, where would you want to go? Why don't we go?
Okay, let's go.
Now. Today.
Okay.
I'm being serious.
We going?
We're leaving today to go to Disneyland.
Are you joking?
No, I'm not joking.
Are we done?
Yes, we're going. Are you excited? It's for your birthday. Happy birthday!
It's my birthday today.
No, in a week, but we're going. I'm crying too. I'm crying too. You excited? Give Daddy hugs.
Are you gonna worry about it?
We're going when Daddy gets home from work. When Daddy gets home from work. Do a happy dance. Yeah! I love you.
I love you too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
So you may be wondering why I shared this story. And it wasn't just to make you laugh, and it wasn't just to make you cry. And there was one time that I did this talk, and there was somebody in the back, and she was absolutely bawling as much as Lily was. But it was really to share the story of a company that we all know very well, Disney. And for those of you who have been to a Disney theme park, you may know that the hype doesn't always live up to the reality. And Disney recognized this, and they invested in over $2 billion in technology to bring to life technology in the park called My Magic Plus or Magic Band, which allows you to do functional things. You can pay for things. You can check into a hotel. You can get a fast pass. For us data geeks, you know, Disney's capturing a lot of data about trends and where people are going, at what times of the day that they're going. But wouldn't it be great if, as Lily and her family are walking around the park, Snow White could walk up to her and say, "Happy birthday, Lily"? Imagine what that experience for Lily would be like. And that takes us to lesson number 5, which is to power new product experiences with data. And this is really a great example of powering brand new customer experiences leveraging data. So here's a recap of the 5 key lessons, and hopefully you've been able to pick up on a few practical lessons on how to drive data science transformation in larger companies. It's a huge opportunity, and that brings us to the end, and we've got quite a bit of time left for any questions that anybody may have.
Matt,
Yeah.
if you had to do it over again, what would you do different?
Oh my. Wow, that's a really good question. I think the thing that I would probably do over again is, I wasn't ready for that one.
Where's your gun? Come on.
You know, I would say it would be to start the replacement of some of the legacy systems a little bit earlier. Because we started to build new on top of old, and we've run into challenges because of that. A lot of our existing infrastructure is still batch-based. So data is moving around once a day. With our new data platform, we're moving everything towards a real-time infrastructure, but not all the rest of the company is ready to come along on that journey. So I think that's probably one of the key things that I would do differently today, is get some of those source systems ready, at least sequenced, so that once we're ready with the new real-time architecture, they're able to plug data in. Instead of, sometimes it feels like we've built a highway that we're not ready to drive on, or cars aren't ready to go down yet. But it's causing the journey to take a little bit longer than we had anticipated, but we're still heading down the right path.
On that same note, how have you been working to get buy-in from the rest of the company?
A lot of it has to do with storytelling and showing people what's in it for them. How is this going to help them? How is this new data platform going to impact their day-to-day work? And bringing people along on the journey while you're driving down that path, I've found has been a really great way to get buy-in and also to get feedback about what you're building while you're building it. Yeah.
So you mentioned with Gap, there's 87 different possible home pages someone can see. Are you this data driven across all the brands in your family, or do you find that some of these brands are more data savvy and want to buy into this than the other ones?
So as far as the digital infrastructure goes, we're working off of a shared stack. So regardless of how advanced analytically each of the brands are, their customers are still getting the same experiences. But we do find differences across our portfolio of brands in their willingness to use data to drive decisions and the numerical literacy. So if you kind of think about, I think it was lesson number 2, or lesson number 1, start from the top and build from the masses. That's the next phase of what we're working on, starting to build that base layer of analytical competency that's going to help drive more and more advanced solutions in the business.
I guess expanding on that, most big companies are probably a collection of smaller companies, each of which want to look at things slightly differently. So as you think about your, brand portfolio, how did you decide what to build horizontally across everybody versus, giving each individual business unit the flexibility to do specifically what they wanted?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So what we think about in the analytical space is definitely more on the technology side, is building those broad capabilities. When it comes to each individual brand, that's why we're embedding those analytical consultants in there, and they help work with the brands to help apply the technology solutions to their specific needs.
On an earlier statement, I believe you said to him, right, that something that you would have changed is, as you guys are building your new data platform or infrastructure, right, building it on the legacy, what are some of those issues that you're seeing as you are building this new foundation versus now that it's on top of this old legacy system?
Yeah, like I mentioned, the biggest one just has to do with the speed of data movement. The other big thing is, a lot of our systems investments have been point solutions over the years. So there's a problem, someone goes out and solves it by building something. Stepping back way before I joined the company, another thing that I would change is a more strategic thought process in how we're deploying, kind of the technology across the board.
So how, you mentioned that between the first and second purchase, it's 34 days, which was, I guess you weren't expecting. How does it then vary from second to third, third to fourth? Does that change if you go from in-store to online? And also, sorry, these are multiple questions, I guess, but if you have like someone 3 times, are they then like gap for life? So they go, once you got someone 3, they go 4, 5, 6, 7, or is there a strong fall off?
Sadly, those stats are a little bit beyond what I'm allowed to share.
For the 80+ views that you mentioned at the very end, could you touch upon that a bit more? How did you decide on those? Maybe the A/B testing or recommender system side of things?
Yeah, so it's A/B testing, and it's also driven by segmentation requests from the brands, and also the end result of learning more and more about our customers.
Have you integrated with any third-party data to understand more about your customers, like their likes or dislikes or their shopping trends or something?
Very lightly. It's still part of the journey that we're on. As part of our enterprise data platform, we'll be bringing in additional third-party data sources as we grow. Yes?
You mentioned earlier that Gap used to just build everything. Can you give us an example of something that you built or Gap built before?
Yeah, our entire e-commerce platform. So we were one of the earliest e-commerce platforms. We were also one of the first multi-brand platforms with a universal shopping cart. So you can shop at any one of the brands on our website, or you can shop at all of the brands on our website and check out one time. And so that was a really early version of something that was completely homegrown.
So in one of your previous slides, you had mentioned how as you get multi-channel and multi-brand, it increases the value of a given customer. As you make the data more available to all of the brands, do you ever worry that they're going to end up cannibalizing each other's sales?
Yes, that is a constant point of discussion, but one that is handled, quite frankly, outside of the analytics team. Our job is to provide that information, and then the executives get to bicker about themselves on how to apply it. Let's see. Yeah.
So you mentioned at the beginning the Google flu situation. Have you had any experiences like that? How did you handle it?
I'm not aware of any at the moment. And so, just for a little bit of context setting, we're about 2 years into this journey, and it's very much a journey that we're still on. I'd say we've got 2 to 5 years to go before we can really start to actualize, the dream of being fully data powered.
So your step 2 was regarding bringing partners in. So the moment you start talking about sharing data with somebody else other than your company, all kinds of red flags go up around data privacy and data security. Can you comment upon how you handle that?
Yes, so we're a very conservative company when it comes to data privacy and data security. So we have many layers of internal reviews before we share any data out, whether it's on an individual customer basis or even on an aggregated basis. So it's something that we are incredibly thoughtful about before we do it. And we're also incredibly thoughtful about the technology behind the scenes when we're doing data transfers to make sure that our customer data is always secure, whether it's in motion or it's at rest, whether it's inside our firewall or outside of our firewall. Yeah?
I'm assuming that it's easier for you to collect data from people that are shopping online as opposed to those that come in store. How do you leverage that? How are you, the best thing I can think of is a rewards program where you're able to see what they purchase. How are you able to do it outside of that?
I mean, that's pretty much the way that we do it. The other way that we do it is by using that identity resolution vendor that I had mentioned that looks across many different signals that we have that helps us tie records together, whether it's online or in store. But we try and create a unified profile of our visitors regardless of what brand and what channel they shop in. I think we've got time for one more.
In your personalization slide, you talked about how it was really important if the customer was multi-purchase, multi-channel, and so on. I'm curious, in your road to personalization, did you ever apply additional clustering layers within each of those groups? So segmentation among single-trip customers, segmentation among multi-trip customers, and so on, as you continue to personalize further?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that helped, that's what helped drive some of those additional 87 segments. Was exactly that type. Not only the products that they purchase, but how they like to transact with us. So thank you, everybody, for coming today. Next up, I'd like to welcome Yorgos, who's going to talk about forecasting at Spotify.